if we take a look at the camera from the top view, so just look at the editor thing, and all I'm going to do is move the mouse sideways. And if I do that, you can see that my camera is orbiting my object. Hooray! Look, all I'm doing is moving the mouse in one direction. I'm going to move the other direction. Excellent. And now I'm going to put it right over here. I'm going to switch the editor view to the side, and I'm just going to move my mouse vertically, so we should orbit. Excellent. And just to make sure I didn't F up some of the things, let's go and move to the side here, and then I'm going to move to the front view like this, and if I move up, okay, yeah, I did F up my gimbaling because of an angle. Yeah, I don't know if I want to do it this way. Because I did F up the gimbaling because the Z is not in the same position. Let's come back to this. Let's come back to this. It's not a gimbal lock, actually. It's not a gimbal lock. Well, it is, I guess. We'll come back to this in a minute. The reason it doesn't look quite right in the game screen here when I do this is because, of course, I'm not reorientating the camera. The camera, in this case, is correctly orbiting around the object, but it's not facing the object. So that's really easy for us to fix. So this is, the rotation is still buggy. Fix me. I'll do it in a slightly different way. But now what we have to do is make sure our camera is still looking at our focal point, i.e. the rig. So luckily, there's a way to fix that. So this rotation before, I should actually call this. This is going to be the orbital rotation, which is broken. We'll get it in a second. But then there's also the look rotation. Look rotation. And there's actually a very handy helper in here called look rotation. And it's very simple. This, you just give it a vector, and this will return a rotation that describes how you need to be rotated to be looking in that direction. So you feed it a direction, and this will be a rotation that describes turn this way, that way, now you're looking in that direction. Easy peasy. What is our direction? Well, our direction will be the direction of our offset from the rig, right? If we are, let's say we're 10 pixels to the right of the rig, then the correct look direction will actually be the inverse of that because we want to look leftwards, right? So if we're over here, we want to look back this way. So all we have to do, I believe, is feed in the negative of our current position, and that will be the correct direction to look in. And we set that as our camera's rotation. Because we've been changing the position of the camera, we want to set the rotation of the camera to be equal to that look rotation. So let's give this a try. Tried Sublime 3 for coding. I love Sublime 3, and that's what I used to use for all my web dev stuff. So now, there we go. Excellent. So I can rotate around this way. I can look up and down, except I can't because some of the angles don't work. Here it's fine. Here I can orbit all the way around. But over on the side, look down on the top here. Ah, fuck it. Top. So, let's figure this out. Because I thought this would be... Oh, because it has to be around my local X. Right. I do want to rotate around my local X, but that's the problem. I'm rotating around the global X, or whatever here. Yeah. Which is the problem. How do I do that around the local... Can I just multiply my current rotation by this? I don't think this works. Hang on. This is going to be the sort of pit where I have to stop and think a little bit more than I can usually do on live. Yeah, no, that's no good. You guys probably have the solution. Transform.rotate around. Is that a real thing? That's awesome. Oh, that is a real thing. Oh, fucking hell. Yes. Excellent. Thank you. I mean, we can figure out the other way too, but this way is way easier. So we're rotating around the point. Now, the point that we're going to rotate around is... I'm assuming these are in world coordinates. Yes, these are in world coordinates. So we want to say that we want to rotate around our parent object. So that is going to be the rig, camera rig, dot transform, which is already transformed, dot position. So this is the world coordinate we're rotating around. Then an axis and a single angle? Really? No, this doesn't work. Well, it works assuming I transform our rotation angles based on our current rotation. Now, there is a few things to that, right? Local to world matrix, you can do some things, because it's from the point of view of the camera. Yeah, there's something here. Yeah, no, this is not the correct solution. Because, again, so the axis is what axis? I mean, we do one at a time, that's fine. So I could say first, let's do the x-axis, which would be, so let's say, x-axis would be, as a shorthand, vector3.right, right? And then we're going to rotate on that based on the mouse's positive rotation. And then we can do that again with up based on the mouse's X slide. But we're ending up with exactly the same thing as before. Aren't we? What if I used, instead of the absolute right, if I said something like the camera dot transform dot right. That might be the way to do it. Dot up. And rotate by a certain amount there. Maybe that's the way to do it. I mean, the other thing I could do with the old solution. Okay, that's good. That's good. And the telling one is this here. Oh, there's the gimbal lock, though. See? Because we're not using quaternions, see that gimbal lock? Which might be fine. I guess we might not care about crossing over. The nice thing, and the real reason you use quaternions, so what's happened is this is working great, right? Doing this, that's good. And then from the side, which wasn't working before, this is now working the way we want. Okay? But gimbal lock is this. When we hit the straight up point, shit goes cray-cray. That's the gimbal lock. And that's what happens if you don't use quaternions. There's just something I'm effing up here. There's a slight thing. Like, this is a fine way to do the quaternion, but then we have to convert this to our relative stuff. What if I used... Hold on. What if I got this back... You know, we'll go with this for now. There's a better way. Because I could use... I guess I could just rotate the rig. Actually, why don't I do that? Because you can use rotate. Because I can't use local rotation on the camera or local rotation on the rig. But rotate allows you to say the relative to. So I can say, oh, and it takes Euler angles. That's quite nice. So I can just feed in, say, the... Well, this is not exactly accurate here. The rotation angles. Probably also takes a quaternion. Oh, it doesn't. Really? All right. The orbital rotation dot Euler angles relative to itself, its local coordinates. That might get the job done. I didn't actually want to rotate the rig, but I guess there's no hardship in doing that. However, if I do that, I need to make sure that the camera is not itself angled, because things are going weird. There we go. Start with this. And then, oh, and the camera's not actually rotating anymore because it's doing... That's not right. I can fix that. But hang on a sec. Let me just watch this. There we go. Do this, and this rotates okay, and we can go all the way around. No gimbal lock anymore. There we go. That works better. I want to avoid rotating the camera rig itself, but the more I think about it, the more that might be what we want. Although, see how it's shifting over to the side? Yeah. It's kind of unappealing. All right. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go and just go back to the version that actually has gimbal lock. I think that's going to be good enough for now. We'll figure it out later. So this version, the only downside with this version is that if you find yourself straight at one of the poles, it'll lock up. You're not going to go all the way around. But other than that, it works beautifully and exactly the way we want it. So we're going to do that. Oh, right. I'm like, why does it look like it's slightly off? It's because the ship route's not actually centered because of many, many very legitimate reasons. Now, let me center the ship route graphic by itself. So now it'll properly look like we're orbiting the center of that. Good. To me, is this the direction we want with the up and down arrow? Do we want to inverse the up and down? Yes, because it's sort of working a little different than I would like. So I'm going to say... For this, we're going to just do an inverted Y. I think that's going to feel a little bit more comfortable. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That feels much more intuitive to me. Or we can invert the whole set. This is the good thing that you set like options to, because different people have different feelings about how things should move, especially vertically, but even horizontally. Some people like it inverted. Because the question is, do you feel, when you move your mouse around, should you feel like you're pushing the camera? Or should you feel like you're spinning a ball? Or, you know, there's like different perspectives. People have the same thing, even when you're doing like a real-time strategy game or whatever, right? Where you've got the camera up and down at the ground. And if you've got like a mouse shortcut, like let's say you hold the middle mouse button and you can move the camera. The question is, do you want to feel like you're moving the camera? Or do you want to feel like you're grabbing the ground and moving the ground? Because those are inverted from one another. And some people prefer one way and some people prefer the other. I tend to like the feel where you're grabbing the ground and moving it. To me, that feels a lot more intuitive and feels kind of awesome and very physical. But those are literally just invert. It's just the question of like throwing a minus sign in front of it to invert that behavior. Some people prefer one way, where moving to the right moves the camera to the right, which will make it look like the world moves to the left. Or some people prefer it when you do it, you feel like the world is moving to the left. Like if you move the mouse to the left, you're pulling the world that way. So it's like an inverted sort of sense of things, but I think we're good here. Excellent. No need to straw poll. You just set up some freaking options. Because when it comes to inputs, you'll never be able to satisfy everyone with the same sort of input scheme, which is why games have option menus and things like that. All right, so we've got that in there. That's groovy. So now I can actually build my ship in all kinds of different directions, which is very exciting. Now, the next thing is, though, this zoom level, especially as we end up doing something like that. It's like, oh no, I want to keep building in this direction, but I can't. What are we going to do? So obviously we need to be able to zoom. Now, it's worth noting that when we use the word zoom to mean like you can sort of look closer or zoom out. On an actual camera, the way zoom works is actually to try to kill flash. Wait, hold on, I'm getting confused about something. On an actual camera, zooming is actually changing the field of view. That's what you're doing when you're turning the zoom knob on a camera. Well, turning a zoom knob. Talking to people who don't use cell phones for everything, but that's basically what's going on. However, in this case, and in all those cases, you don't actually move the camera, right? Like our camera here is in the same physical location, we're just changing the field of view. But that's obviously not what we want to do in this case. clearly. We probably want to keep the same field of view, but we actually want to physically move the camera, which is a different term in thing. Is that dolly? Or is that term in like filming camera work? The dolly action to go back and forth? Anyway, that's what we want to do. So obviously, I think the best thing to do is to map it to the mouse wheel. We can also provide a secondary mapping with, say, page up and page down. Yeah. Same thing. Maybe we'll use WASD to move the camera around, and perhaps the arrow keys to do the orbit, or, you can have all kinds of different overrides like that. That's very easy to do and fine. Let's just do the mouse wheel for now. It is referred to as a dolly. Boom! I'm awesome. All right. So how do we do that? Well, let's go back into our camera management script and do the mouse wheel. So it's not panning. Panning is sideways. In fact, I think panning is specifically left to right. Dolly is specifically back to front. And I think there's another term for up and down, although it may also be panning. I actually don't know. But bum 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 bum. Do the descent mapping to move the 6 degrees. Oh, that's funny. Need a steady cam. Pitch, yaw, and roll. Well, that's a whole other thing. Okay, so mouse wheel. By default, probably the easiest way to work the mouse wheel is to actually use the Unity input system over here, because the mouse scroll wheel is labeled as an axis, which is actually kind of handy. It depends on what you're trying to do. You may want to read things in a different way. If you're doing UI stuff, the event system has its own system for looking at mouse wheel actions, but I think for us we can do that. Now note there is a mouse X and mouse Y axis that we can also interact with, but which is fine to get like the relative motion. But for some reason I always like working with the pixels directly. I don't know why. But I do tend to use the mouse scroll wheel axis to do that, especially since you can add your own alternate buttons for this axis, which I'm trying to, I think we'd want it this way. Oh no, what is it? Page up. Unity input manager page up. What the hell do they call it? I hate this interface. They're redoing the whole input system over here. Is it not just, I don't understand. Oh, did I have like caps? Probably cap sensitive. Yeah, okay, so that doesn't work. Boom, boom, page down. I actually suspect we're going to want to invert this behavior in a second. But there you go. The nice thing about the input manager, it's really easy to put like multiple different types of controls over here. So mouse scroll wheel, we'll use the scroll wheel, and it'll also bind to page up and page down, and that's all groovy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to split this update function here, because especially with the comments, it's quite large, but they do specifically different things. I'm going to go, I'll actually relabel this. This is going to be called the orbit camera function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new update. Void update, like this. And I'm going to say orbit camera. And I'm going to say zoom, or I'll call it dolly camera. Hello, dolly. AKA zoom camera, right? And all we want to do with this is move the camera backwards and forwards as we mouse wheel. So we need some sort of distance. So we're going to call this the delta, because this is going to be the difference, which is going to be input dot get axis, and we need to get the axis name, which is mouse scroll wheel, like that. Will it paste? No, of course it won't paste. Because mono behavior on the PC is kind of dumb sometimes, but there you go. If ever you can't paste, if you're working on Windows and you can't paste in mono develop, what you do is just do a Control F to open up the find, paste what you want in here, and then copy it again in there, and then you can do it. It's only a Windows-specific issue. It doesn't happen on the Mac. It doesn't happen in mono behavior. Like if you just get like Xamarin Studio, I don't believe it affects that. It's just the mono develop build that comes with Unity, as far as I can tell. Very annoying. And then at this point, someone's going to say, why don't you use Visual Studio? Well, because Visual Studio is not available for all platforms. And in addition to that, mono develop comes by default with Unity, so that's what most people use, and it makes it better for tutorials for me to do that. But yeah, it's most of them. It's not available on all platforms thing as well. Okay, so this should be the difference of our scroll. Okay, and we can actually tune those numbers a bit. Well, I guess you don't tune them here, but you can multiply it. So this is going to be some number. We don't know how much of a number, and honestly, it partially depends on OS settings and all kinds of bullshit like that. And again, this is another example that you probably want to put some sort of sensitivity slider in an options menu. We got some sort of thing over here. So we want to like move the camera backwards or forwards based on the value of delta. Oh, there was something else I want to address here in orbit camera. We are currently doing it so that when you hit play, you move the mouse and then it sort of just stops there, whatever, right? And you can tune this sensitivity as well, so you don't have to, if you want. Just by changing, and actually I should make this thingy. This, we're gonna have, I'll just, you know, it could be a public actually. Public, float, orbit sensitivity. Sensitivity is equal to, whoops, 10. It's actually an invert because the lower you make this number, the more sensitive it is. It'll like rotate faster. So if we set this to 5, it would rotate twice as fast, for example. So we'll use this and then put that in there. There we go. And again, you may want to tune that with an options menu or something of that nature. But that's not the only way to do it, right? Some people prefer where you click and move to the side and then it sort of keeps turning slowly. And then the further you go, the faster it sort of turns until you let go. It's very, very, very easy to do that. What we would do in that case, for example, is if you want to keep the spinning going even without moving the mouse more, don't do this, right? So let's say I tab this out. Probably this is going to be too fast, but I'm just going to click and move slightly to the side. Oh, right, no, because I'm still setting. Ah! Because what you want to do then is you want to... Oh, there we go. Maybe I hadn't compiled it right. Try that again. There we go. This is what I mean. So I'm still holding down the mouse button, but I'm not moving my mouse anymore. Why didn't it kick? It must not have compiled before I ran it. Or maybe I forgot to hit save. Now I'm going to move my mouse a little bit more. It'll spin faster. Some people prefer this. Obviously, you probably want to drop the sensitivity. And in fact, what you need to make sure to do is over here with your rotate angles, you're going to want to do like a multiply by time.delta time. I guess we could put a, let's put in a Boolean. Public Boolean, what do we call this? Like, hold to orbit? Hold to orbit? I don't think it's right, but let's say we, I'll have this default to false because I don't personally like it. Thank you to all our September patrons, i.e. people who've pledged in September and are supporting the videos from October to early November, and especially these Mike Check supporters. We've got Yuko Finn, Ole Peter Talgo, Adam Conway, Drazian, Jan Torrevel, Adjective, Michael McClintock, Aaron Doibson, Craig Mortel, Stephen Wendell, Julien Auger Lafont, Marius Fieldvold, Speedy Savant, Stephen Stager, Valiant Cake Fiend, Wes Olenboving, Jason Yanity, Kale the Quick, Neil, Blakey, Milner, and everyone who's watched, shared, favored, and subscribed to the series. Thank you very, very much.